Philippines Network, DXKS. DXKS. Jess Ochenta. Ang inyong Radio Ronda. 5,000 watts. Nagsimbiya sa ikatulong andana sa UFCO Lim Building, Borromeo Street, Dakbayan sa Surigao. RPN Radio Philippines Network, DXKS. Jess Ochenta. Ang inyong Radio Ronda.
You've heard it all. Don't smoke, drink in moderation, eat healthy, and exercise regularly. But did you know that stress can also take a huge toll on your immune system? Mindfulness is about being present and noticing what's happening in your mind and body. Here's one way to do it. First, pause and focus on your body. Notice what you see, hear, taste, and smell. Next, focus your attention on what you feel on each part of your body. Start with your head, then move down to your toes. And lastly, acknowledge your thoughts and emotions. The key here is not to judge your feelings as good or bad and to just accept them as they are.
Tuloy-tuloy ang balita.
Weekend.
Sabado at Linggo. Kaya narito kami para ihatid ang pinakamainit na balita at impormasyon para sa inyo. Newsroom Weekend sa CNN Philippines.
President of the Philippines, Rodrigo Roa Duterte.
I, Maria Leonor Meronero, having been appointed to the position of chair.
Elections, how votes are counted and winners are declared. Voting machines automatically count each ballot. The results are then printed as the election return and sent electronically.
Good evening, I'm Pia Ontiveros. Welcome to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Tonight on the program, first, a party leader abandoning him, now a vice presidential candidate suggesting he withdraws from the race. But presidential candidate Senator Ping Lacson again says he will not back down. A bird flu outbreak hits parts of Central Luzon. How will this affect the supply of poultry products? And an event fans have been waiting for, the stars of hit Korean drama Crash Landing on You finally tie the knot. For the nth time, Senator Ping Lacson says he will not back out from the presidential race. This in response to the suggestion of vice presidential candidate Lito Atienza that they drop their bids to form a new tandem to challenge Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte. Our George Cahilas has that story.
I would suggest that Lito Atienza should go back to school and study JMRC. Who is he to tell me to withdraw? Wala siyang personality. I'm not backing out. Ilang beses ko na sinabi, ha?
A straightforward response from presidential contender Senator Ping Lacson to vice presidential candidate Congressman Lito Atienza's suggestion for both of them to withdraw from the race, to give way to the Pacquiao-Soto tandem.
Because people would immediately realize, teka muna, I must contribute my vote to this new direction. Nagkaroon ng national sentiment for a Pacquiao-Soto tandem that could catch fire and it could consume the Sara Bongbong myth.
It was presidential bet center Manny Pacquiao who first disclosed the possibility of his running mate Atienza withdrawing from the VP race. Atienza has been unable to join Pacquiao on the campaign trail because of his knee replacement surgery. The promptly vice presidential candidate is recovering at home.
Wala naman kaming problema dito Atienza. At ang sabi naman ng aking katandem na kung may mapili man siya na kung sakaling hindi niya talaga kaya, kung may mapili man siya ay gusto niya ang si Soto ang pwedeng dalhin as a Vice President.
Senate President Tito Soto says he'll stick with Lacson until May 9, but will welcome endorsements from other candidates. Even Lacson himself says he has no problem should Atienza drop his bid and Pacquiao decides to carry Soto as his running mate.
Well, I will not prevent SP Soto from attending any of Manny Pacquiao's rallies. May usapan kami, as long as he endorses only me. I'm a warrior. Mandirigma ito, hindi nila kaya itong sukatin.
Lacson recently left Partido Reforma after its stalwart former House Speaker Bebot Alvarez jumped ship to Vice President Leni Robredo. Soto remains the party's vice presidential bet. From Calauit, Zamboanga del Norte, George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
Presidential candidate Isko Moreno is urging fellow hopeful Bongbong Marcos to pay his family's estate tax dues. Speaking before a sortie in Oriental, Mindoro, Moreno urged the Marcos campaign to pay at least 23 billion pesos in estate taxes, an amount decided by the Supreme Court about 25 years ago. Moreno made the comment after Partido Federal ng Pilipinas General Counsel George Briones admitted that amount was already decided with finality.
Pagbigyan natin si attorney, bayaran mo na yung 23 billion. Attorney, final na pala sana. Kaya gamitin namin, pambayad sa, pangayuda natin sa mga farmers. Bili tayo ng fertilizer, 2,600 per bag. Iayuda natin sa mga driver ng jeep, bus, taxi, grab, tricycle. Kasi hirap na hirap sila, lumilit ang kita nila. And I'm happy at least hindi ako fake news. Sinabi niya na. Inamin na niya. Umamin din. Awa ng Diyos.
Marcos, meanwhile, remains mum on the unsettled estate taxes. He refused to respond to reporters who attempted to interview him backstage after a campaign rally in Digos City, Davao del Sur last night. Some security personnel also blocked journalists trying to get near the presidential bet. The last time the Marcos campaign released a statement on the controversy was on Saturday, March 26th. The spokesperson, Vic Rodriguez, said the issue is just all about politics. Members of the Akbayan trooping to the Bureau of Internal Revenue earlier today, asking the agency to file criminal charges against Marcos and his family over their unpaid estate taxes. In a letter petition, the party list group also urged the BIR to exempt the Marcoses from the bank secrecy rules and divulge information about their estate. In a statement, as shared by Finance Secretary Sonny Dominguez, the BIR said it is collecting and has demanded payment from the Marcos estate administrators, but they have not yet paid. The Bureau went on to say it is consolidating titles of properties in favor of the government as it plans to auction them off to the public. It adds the Marcos family has not taken any steps to settle the dues because of pending litigation. Marcos' party claims there is finality on the estate tax liabilities worth 23 billion pesos, but not the penalties and surcharges that form a bulk of the estimated 203 billion peso debt. Now on to other presidential candidates. Vice President Leni Robredo says she plans to declare an educational crisis in the country to address problems plaguing the education system, such as the salary of teachers, access to schooling, and the quality of education. Labor leader Leody de Guzman calls on state insurance company SSS not to suspend the pension release of those who have yet to shift to Peso Net participating banks. De Guzman says many senior citizens came to him worrying that they might not receive their pension for failing to move to Peso Net beyond the March 31 deadline. Bongbong Marcos gets the endorsement of Lanao del Sur Governor Bombit Adyong. The province has more than 685,000 voters. Since Sunday, governors of South Cotabato, Maguindanao, Sultan Kudarat, and Davao de Oro have endorsed the former senator. Meanwhile, Marcos sees no need to continue work on the rehabilitation of the city of Marawi after the war in 2018.
Ginagawa na yun. There's no diversity. Tinatapos na may Pangulong Duterte.
And the National Unity Party endorses the vice presidential bid of Marcos's running mate, Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte. The NUP previously expressed support for Marcos. The Commission on Elections unveils a new format for its next presidential debate. Attendees will be split into 3 groups so they can respond to different sets of questions, allowing them to address each other directly. The debate this Sunday will center on government accountability, domestic policies, and security.
20 seconds ang ibibigay natin or 2 minutes para makasagot ng mas malalim at mas masustansya yung ating mga kandidato.
COMELEC has not yet come up with more penalties for debate skippers like Bongbong Marcos, except the ban from using the free e-rally channel on Facebook. The portal has lower views compared to candidates' official pages. Poll Commissioner George Garcia appeals to Congress to pass a law to provide the rules and sanctions for national debates. Well, ready for the next COMELEC presidential debate? Catch the showdown this Sunday, April 3rd at 7 in the evening. It'll air live here on CNN Philippines and on our YouTube page. But before that, join us for a pre-debate special hosted by yours truly at 6:30, only here on CNN Philippines. In other COMELEC updates, poll officials are expected to visit the province of Abra next week after a gunfight broke out between police and the security aides of Pilar Vice Mayor and re-electionist Jaja Josefina Disono. COMELEC Commissioner George Garcia says they hope to convince candidates to sign a covenant for a safe and peaceful election. Police are looking to file election-related charges against Disono after her van refused to stop at a checkpoint last Tuesday, sparking a standoff that left one of her personnel dead and 2 police officers injured. Meanwhile, up to 300 towns and provinces may be declared areas of concern in light of possible political unrest ahead of Election Day. But COMELEC has yet to release the list of these so-called hotspots, despite the recommendation of the local police and military.
Hindi po kasi ganun kadali na mag-declare ng hotspot sa isang area. Una, kawawa yung negosyo. Number 2, kawawa yung turismo. Number 3, kawawa yung pamumuhay ng mga tao. They will be restricted and limited sa kanilang movement.
Existing COMELEC rules identify local governments under 4 categories: red for areas of serious concern due to reported election-related violence, intense political rivalry, and the presence of private armed groups and terrorist rebels. Places with milder safety risk assessments are placed under orange and yellow alerts. Over to the United States, the Philippine Consulate General in New York condemns the series of attacks against Asian Americans on the streets of Manhattan. One of the latest victims, a Filipino who is now in critical condition. A warning to our viewers, some of the images are graphic. Tristan Adalo reports.
2 suspects in brutal attacks against Filipinos in New York are now under police custody. The latest assault on members of the Filipino community bring the total cases of anti-Asian hate crimes involving Filipinos to 34. On Sunday, a 73-year-old Filipino was beaten along a street in Manhattan. Footage shows he was repeatedly kicked and punched by the suspect to get his wallet. The consulate says the man came from the church when the attack happened.
I was able to talk to him last night, and he told us he's okay, except for this swollen eye.
Another Filipino was attacked near a fast food store in New York on Monday. In the CCTV footage, the victim was trying to place an order in the store when he was repeatedly beaten and then robbed by the suspect. The man sustained severe head injury following the attack.
He's still in the hospital in stable but critical condition. So we're trying to get in touch with his family and with the hospitals.
Just 2 weeks ago, a 67-year-old Filipino senior citizen was hit 125 times in the head by a man in another suspected case of hate crime.
Siyempre nakakabahala, and many of our kababayan have told the consulate that natatakot na silang lumabas. Natatakot silang mag-subway, natatakot lumabas ng kanilang mga bahay paggabi.
The Philippine Consulate in New York calls on authorities to step up measures to prevent these crimes.
Some of them have in fact been carrying yung pepper spray as a precautionary measure. In addition to that, the consulate has conducted a series of webinars, the latest of which was a few days ago, on self-defense training and situational awareness. And we plan to do more of this in the coming weeks.
The Philippine government also urges Filipinos to report all incidents of attacks in order to get the bigger picture of the problem. Newly elected New York City Mayor Eric Adam also vowed to keep the streets of New York safe again. The consulate says there are 150,000 Filipinos in the state of New York, while over 80,000 are residing in the city. Tristan Odalo, CNN Philippines.
Coming up on Newsnight, a check on the situation in Bulacan and Pampanga, where there are reports of bird flu outbreaks. Plus, it is happy ever after for Captain Ree and Yoon Seri from Real to Real. Hashtag the Binjin wedding, and K-drama fans are getting all the feels. Stay tuned to CNN Philippines.
Pandemic, serving others is the best. Sa pagtutulungan, patuloy ang ating laban sa buhay. Kaya dapat always healthy. With proper diet, exercise, and MX3 coffee mix to ignite my day. Hi guys! Lagi akong focused, active, at MX Extraordinary. Because the most important things in life deserve nothing less. MX3 coffee mix, my choice.
Unang tama, ilabagad. Ang sarap, naglalagablab. Unang tama, malaya. Promise, sumisipa. Naglalagablab. Unang sweldo, unang red horse. Espiritu, ang lakas. Iwasak, sa ulitin. Susulitin ikaw, ito ang tama. Heroes Extra, the number one. Ito ang tama.
Welcome back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. First, the rising prices of food and now a possible threat to supply. The Agriculture Department has detected bird flu outbreaks in Bulacan and Pampanga. Stanley Gaheta tells us whether this will affect the supply of poultry products.
Duck racing is an all-year-round earner for 58-year-old Ramon Regalado of Kalumpit, Bulacan.
Araw-araw nangingitlog sila. Para sa akin madali kasi nandiyan ka lang, kumisita ka.
He says business has been good the past 10 years and so far, his duck farm has been bird flu free.
Ako, wala pa ako nakakitang nagkasakit Sa alaga ko, alam mo na mamatay. Dasal lang. Huwag sana kami tamaan yung sakit na yun. Parang hindi pa ako naniniwala kasi wala pa yung mga ito ko, hindi mo nagkakaroon ganun.
But there's cause for concern. The Department of Agriculture says bird flu or avian influenza has been detected in some duck farms in Bulacan and quail farms in Pampanga. They say they are acting immediately to prevent its further spread. The Philippines has more than 20 hotspots at high risk for bird flu, as they are areas on the flight path of migratory birds, the most probable carriers of the virus that causes the disease.
Ang technical na meaning po ng outbreak ay hindi yan depende sa
number ng cases. So kahit isa na kaso, outbreak po yan.
The Department of Agriculture has issued a Memorandum Circular Number 5 prescribing the guidelines on the local movements of domestic and wild birds and poultry products and byproducts during the avian influenza surveillance period. The policy regulates the movement of ducks, quails, and other poultry commodities in affected areas, particularly those coming from within the 1-kilometer quarantine area.
Ang nagmamanifest po rito, of course, ay yung respiratory sign yan. May mga sipon, matamlay yung manok. Andyan din po yung kanyang nervous sign na parang yung leg niya ay nababali, na parang siya ay umiikot. Ito naman pong virus na ito ay madaling mamatay at namamatay ito sa init, sa ordinary disinfection.
Meanwhile, the Broilers Association said poultry products which are confined with strict monitoring and security to ensure its freshness are not affected by bird flu.
Yung biosecurity measures ng broiler industry, mataas na talaga yan. May disinfection yan, may interdiction measures ka. By the standards of the industry, wala na kami idadagdag eh.
The public is encouraged to report suspicious illnesses and behaviors of poultry animals, but authorities assure there's no need to worry for now.
Wala pong dapat ipangamba. Protektado pa po yung ating mga manok. Ito po yung mga 42-day-old na kinakain natin. At yung mga ating mga nangingitlog.
Stanley Gaete, CNN Philippines.
Almost all Filipinos want free access to medicines amid the health crisis. A commission survey from the social weather stations shows 96% of respondents believe the government should provide free medications. They say medicine is the most burdensome medical expense, followed by doctors and laboratory fees and payment for hospital rooms. Most respondents also want a guaranteed PhilHealth subsidy to cover their health expenses. The survey was conducted among 1,440 adults from December 12 to 16 last year, or before the COVID-19 surge. Now, how will the pandemic pan out for the rest of the year? The World Health Organization projects COVID-19 will evolve, but the severity of the disease will wane over time. Periodic spikes in cases and deaths may happen, which would require boosting in vulnerable populations. The WHO also lays down two other possible scenarios.
In the best case scenario, we may see less severe variants emerge and boosters or new formulations of vaccines won't be necessary. In the worst case scenario, a more virulent and highly transmissible variant emerges. Against this new threat, people's protection against severe disease and death, either from prior vaccination or infection, will wane rapidly. Addressing this situation would require significantly altering the current vaccines and making sure they get to the people who are most vulnerable to severe disease.
COVID-19 cases have been on the decline in many countries since the Omicron variant wave. A 4-day on-site work has been approved for employees of the Court of Appeals, the Court of Tax Appeals, and the Sandigan Bayan beginning April 4th. The 5th day will be spent working from home. All offices will remain open from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday to Friday. Courts initially adopted a 4-day work week, increased to 10-hour workdays. But yesterday, some Supreme Court offices announced the April 4 shift to a mix of on-site and remote work. The SC says the 10-hour work arrangement was counterproductive and inconvenient for employees. The CA, the CTA, and Sandigan Bayan then followed suit. The National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, previously proposed a 4-day work week to help reduce costs amid rising fuel prices. Well, this year's Balikatan exercises are in full swing, the last under the Duterte administration. David Santos takes us to Cagayan, where Filipino and American troops are standing shoulder to shoulder.
AAD of Philippine Marine Corps.
Hundreds of Filipino and U.S. Marines descending in this remote coastal corner of Luzon, training for a range of battlefield scenarios. The Filipinos showing off their latest but relatively modest hardware, from the amphibious assault vehicles to the Black Hawk choppers. The Americans serving as support force, flying in via their CH-53s. The idea of this exercise is for U.S. troops to link up with their Filipino counterparts with the mission of recapturing a territory or defending it from an external threat. Balikatan is a decades-old operation between two longtime allies with a constantly evolving purpose. As the live-fire exercise is carried out in Tarlac, the amphibious landing event is held in the coast of Cagayan Province, roughly 350 miles south of Taiwan. The local government here is opposing the use of gunfire in the joint drills, fearing it could anger China.
I consider Taiwan a powder keg, no? Since alam naman natin yung sinabi President Xi Jinping that they will recover Taiwan at whatever cost. And at any cost, no? So I don't want my province, no, to be involved.
Wala na yung commerce na yan. Kasi kung aatakihin talaga tayo, we need to prepare.
While this year's Balikatan, deemed the biggest in recent years, may be seen as a major show of force designed to deter China's aggression, officials insist this is more to enhancing defense ties than targeting a specific enemy.
Again, this exercise is not executed as part of any current global situation. We've been executing this exercise for several decades at this point, and it's an annually scheduled exercise.
It's high time na siguro with itong mga unfolding events na naririnig natin internationally. Hindi natin alam, baka madamay tayo dyan. So at least we're ready.
A joint mission cautious not to be dragged to any conflict involving nations, but definitely ready to face real-world scenarios. In Claveria, Cagayan, David Santos, CNN Philippines.
More stories coming up. Chris Rock speaks up after the Oscars incident that shocked many, saying he's still processing the onstage slap. And love is in the air. The crash landing a new couple is officially husband and wife. Details after the break.
Sa dami ng taong nakalipas, salamat dahil hindi niyo kami iniwan. Dahil sa inyong tulong, mas naging maayos ang akala namin nakalimutan na. Basta't nariyan kayo, alam naming hindi mapapabayaan ang aming paghihirap para sa sarili, sa pamilya, sa kapwa, at sa bansa. Kampante kami, basta't kasama kayo.
Sa mabisa, bawat minutong lumilipas, hinahanap-hanap kita, hanap-hanapin ka, sabik sa'yo. Gintong dagat ang pagitan mo at ng iyong kasama. Gintong dagat ang pagitan ng magkatabing isla. Nagkalapit na magkahiwalay ang kahapon at bukas. Gintong dagat ang pagitan. San Miguel, Bayville, ang nasa pagitan. Laging nasa pagitan na San Miguel, Bayville, sarap laging kasama.
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. Breaking news first here at this hour. The government placing more areas under alert level 1 beginning tomorrow, April 1st until April 15th. Almost 200 cities, provinces and towns will downgrade to the lowest alert level as COVID-19 cases continue to decline. Officials also retain alert level 1 here in Metro Manila, while some parts of the country are still under alert level 2. You can visit cnnphilippines.com for the full list of areas and alert levels. Updates now. The Oscars highlight that took social media by storm. Chris Rock saying he's still processing the onstage slap from actor Will Smith. The comedian brought up the controversy for the first time in public during yesterday's stand-up gig for his Ego Death Tour. Chris said he will address the incident once he has processed it, adding that it will be serious and funny. The Academy has already begun disciplinary proceedings against Will for violations including inappropriate physical conduct. The organization also said Will was asked to leave the ceremony after he hit Chris, but he refused to. And it is a special day for fans of the hit K-drama Crash Landing on You, but even more so for its stars who tied the knot today. Lead actors Yeon Bin and Son Ye Jin held a private wedding ceremony in Seoul, South Korea. The two first announced their relationship in January last year. Fans took to social media to congratulate the newlyweds, with one recalling how their engagement story from their last K-drama became real for the actors. The hashtag Bin Jin wedding also went trending, as well as hashtag Chloe episode 17. The netizen looked back at how the Korean stars went from starring alongside each other in the negotiation to becoming lifetime partners. And this fan taking the celebration to another level, sharing a cake for the wedding with The Office. And that is it for tonight. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Kini ang simbianan sa RPN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKS. DXKS 1080. Ang inyong Radio Ronda. 5,000 watts nagsimbiya sa ikatulong andana sa UFCO Lim Building, Borromeo Street, Dakbayan sa Surigao. RPN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKS 1080, ang inyong Radio Ronda.
Welcome back to Politics as Usual. I'm Pia Ontiveros together with Paolo Abrera, my special guest co-anchor for this special episode. Dahil ang pinag-uusapan natin ngayon, cybersecurity, cyber attacks in light of our elections in May, in 2 months' time. And syempre, ang dami kasi mga cyber attacks that have been happening, Paolo. So our next guest is James Allworth. He's head of innovation of Cloudflare, an internet Cloudflare, right? An internet infrastructure and cybersecurity company. He's joining us from Singapore. Hi, James. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. Let's begin with this. What is and then tell us, what is correct, how to correctly pronounce it. Is it DDoS or DDoS attack? What is
DDoS.
It? DDoS. Okay,
yeah,
what is it?
DDoS.
Then you can describe it this way, You could be as technical and as techy as possible, and then give us the layman's definition.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you both for having me. A DDoS attack, well, it stands for a distributed denial of service attack. At its most basic level, this is a malicious attack designed to take a server offline. So how does it do it? Well, think of the internet like a network with a series of computers, and your phone, you want to access something on the internet, perhaps from your computer. You go and try and do that. The way a DDoS attack works is it floods the server that you're trying to reach that has the information that you want, preventing you from gaining access to it. So we talked about it being like a traffic network or a phone network. So imagine you're trying to call someone up, but someone wants to stop you and they have 100 people all around the world calling the number at the same time. It effectively prevents you from gaining access to that server, and it can do it at the level of the server. The server gets overwhelmed, or it can congest the networks, the bandwidth pipes that are trying to get to the server. There are a range of different ways of doing it. And the way hackers do this is they compromise a number of machines into what's called a botnet, and effectively turn computers or phones or other devices into zombie devices. They appear to be working, but they're waiting for a call from the hacker to basically say, okay, send a flood, send a phone call, send a request to this server because we want to try and knock it offline. And so when that device receives the command, it floods the destination and it knocks the server offline.
Back in the day, in the 1970s, we had those, the rotary phones, right? And when you call someone, and then sometimes there's a cross line, di ba? Remember?
A party line, yeah.
Parang, is it like that? No,
well, in effect,
exactly.
I think what James is describing is basically a traffic jam of information. I mean, you're trying to get information from a particular site, but the hackers have flooded it with so many requests for information.
But it's not a real traffic jam. It's
it's a traffic jam. It's a traffic jam of information. I mean, the requests for information is there, but it's coming from so many sources, from so many computers. I wanted to ask James, so when you describe these zombie computers, zombie devices, are we talking about devices that may be or are in fact making these requests without the owner knowing? I mean, these aren't devices set up by the hacker. It's not like a big farm of computers under the control of the hacker. We're talking about devices, maybe perhaps like the one that's in my hand or sitting on your desk, your desktop, that's sort of taken hostage. Is that what we're talking about here, James?
That's exactly it. Computers are often a common device that are compromised, but it's also things that you might not expect that are now connected to the internet. We're connecting everything to the internet. We're connecting cameras to monitor our houses. We're connecting doorbells. Like, we're getting smart devices. These devices are often not as commonly patched. People aren't as cautious about keeping them up to date as they would be with a computer or a phone. And so once a vulnerability is discovered, if someone's not actively managing them in the background, which like a lot of folks, you buy one of these devices, you don't think you need to apply software updates to it. They're not actively managing it. A vulnerability is discovered. Hackers are consistently scanning for vulnerabilities like this. They take over the device, or they turn it into this zombie like I described, and it just sits there. It appears to be working as normal, and then one day they want to attack something. They send the command, and your smart doorbell is attacking a server somewhere else in the world.
So your average tito or tita of Manila should not ignore the update your software notifications.
Right, absolutely.
I'll remember that. Yeah.
Well, I think I just wanted to frame it, we're talking about the big picture of how cybercrime and hacking are going to affect us and play a role in the upcoming elections. But I think it also pays to frame it in that there are roles that each of our individual lapses in security will play. If we don't safeguard the security of our personal devices, they then become part of this zombie bot network, which can be weaponized and used against whatever organization you're targeting. James, what would be the best course of action to sort of avoid being part of this zombie army?
Right. So, Paolo, you touched on one of these already just before. Keeping your software up to date is absolutely essential. Vulnerabilities are discovered on devices on a regular basis, phones, computers, smart devices. Manufacturers are normally pretty good at responding. It's really important that you keep your devices up to date. There are a range of other things that are important beyond just DDoS attacks, though, which if you don't keep things up to date, like a device can become one of those zombies. But there are just other general good habits that you should have around cybersecurity. Art touched on a few of them before. Not sharing passwords is a really important one. I would say not reusing passwords across accounts is really important. So what can happen is a site can get compromised, and once a hacker downloads or the usernames and passwords, one of the first things they will do is endeavor to use those same usernames and passwords on other sites to see whether people are using the same passwords, because most people can remember one, maybe two, maybe three. And so you get into one account and then a hacker's into 2 accounts and 3 accounts and 4 accounts. Multi-factor authentication, or what's otherwise known as 2-factor authentication, is something that's really valuable to do. This is where you get a second layer of identification beyond just your password. So this is when your bank might text you to send you a text with a confirmation code that you have to enter in. For important accounts like emails, banks, social media, I think that's a really good idea. Using a password manager is even more advanced, where what it will do is it will generate a random password for you for each one of the different accounts that you have, so you don't have to remember all the different passwords. Phishing is a really important thing to be aware of now. So making sure that you're cautious before clicking on links on email, or, like Art mentioned, clicking on links on social media. That's one way that people can get compromised. And then the last thing that's best practice here is to really make sure you have an offline backup of important information. If there's stuff that's super important and there's a potential for it to be compromised, keeping it backed up is a really good practice.
James, what other forms of what are the other forms of cyber attacks? And earlier Art was saying that more people are, almost everyone in the world is online because of the pandemic. So that's why there are so many cyber attacks now, because almost everyone's online?
I mean, that is definitely part of it. If you think about how business was conducted 20 years ago, a lot of it was walking into a bank and or walking into a store. There wasn't this vector, but now everybody is online, and so there's just so much more opportunity for cyber attacks to be taking place. There are again that many more people. That many people who aren't paying attention to cybersecurity, so it can also be a very lucrative way for hackers to spend their time, whether it's compromising individuals or compromising businesses.
Let's talk a little bit big picture here. What about state-sponsored cyber attacks? This is a term that you hear quite often, and perhaps in the sphere of putting it against the larger picture of our elections, how big a deal is a larger organization, something as big as an entire country, working against you?
Man, that's as serious as it can get. I mean, in the same way that we just talked about how business used to be conducted offline, but now it's online. The military work used to be conducted purely on the battlefield, and now it can be conducted digitally as well. Many nations have folks working for them in this capacity, and if you're a hostile nation and you want to target a nation or target another organization or even an individual, they have people in their employ that can focus and do this kind of thing. And it's just another reason why it's important for everyone, from governments through to businesses through to individuals, to be so focused on paying attention to cybersecurity, because that is another vector through which hostile actors can interfere with the runnings of a government or a business or even your life.
Okay, well, how are we able to actually identify? I mean, once you have things like DNS fronting, you have IP masks. You can't quite tell who the threat actors are. How do we then identify that an attack is, for example, a state-sponsored attack, or if it's just a small-time teenager in his basement, trying to ramp up his hacking credibility?
I mean, it's an excellent question. One of the things that differentiates the online world from the physical world is it's that much easier for folks to cover their tracks. And so we were talking earlier about DDoS attacks. Most countries have laws on the books preventing DDoS attacks, making them illegal. But when it comes to a device that's been compromised in another country and appears to be a legitimate traffic, it's owned by an actual human and they use it for legitimate purposes. Like, it can be very hard to stop that. It can be very hard to figure out who originated the attack, because someone's controlling that zombie device, but it's not always possible to tell who. Now, in the instance of large-scale cyber attacks against organizations or large governments, the folks who are who are on the receiving end of that often have teams that are the specialists who are able to do the work to figure out who is responsible for it. But that, like you said, like, there are a number of ways that these hackers or these state-sponsored actors will use to cover their tracks, and it can make it extremely challenging sometimes to figure out who did it, which in turn makes it more attractive for state-sponsored actors to continue these attacks.
Right. Digital forensics is another very interesting field, and I'd love to discuss that a little further with James. James, we've really just scratched the surface here. Cloudflare Head of Innovation, James Allworth, will still be with us in the last segment of our show.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni Bay.
Protektahi ang imong mga mata batok sa delikado ug makadaot nga ultraviolet nga silaw sa adlaw ug uban pa. Pinaagi sa pagsulob og eksakto nga prescription sa antiyohos o antipara. Likay ang mga simptomas sama sa hanap nga pananaw sa layo o duol nga basahon, sakit sa ulo ug uban pa nga makaapekto sa atong kahimsog nga ang hinungdan depekto sa atong mga mata. Alang sa kumpleto nga primary eye care, contact lenses, fashion eyewear, computer eyeglasses, sunglasses, accessories ug uban pa, adto kita sa AG Buñuel Optical Clinic. Ang AG Buñuel Optical Clinic nagpahinumdum kanato nga ang kahimsog sa atong mga mata usa ka prioridad nga angay ipa-check up kausa matag tuig aron pagsiguro nga luwas kita sa piligrong mga sakit. Pinaagi sa lisensyado og qualified optometrists nga maoy mo prescribe sa eksaktong kagamitan og kung primary eye care ang paghisgutan. Duaw lang silang buhatan sa 3636 sa Nicolas Street, Surigao City ug adunay ilang extension office sa Aurelianida Street, Cantilan, Surigao del Sur. Ayaw kalimti higala, AG Buñuel Optical Clinic.
Ang AG Buñuel Optical Clinic doon na branch dito sa lungsod sa Dapa sa may Lupis Haina Street, Poblasyon Dapa, Surigao del Norte.
Ang AG Buñuel Optical Clinic dinhi sa syudad ng Surigao no transfer na sa bag-ong location sa Nicolas Street Ragyahapon, tapad sa Garcia Hotel at bang sa Unicity. Ang Riverside Parts Master Incorporated na silang bagong location sa Dalan, Burgos ning atong syudad. Mahimo niyong tawagan sa telephone number 231-7478 or 826-3663. Mga produkto nga inyong mapalit, genuine, Makita Power Tools sama sa planer, drill, grinder, Triton Paints, construction supplies, angle bars, flat bars, GI pipes, automotive spare parts, Firefly electrical devices sama sa switches, bulbs ug outlets. Adto ang Riverside Parts Master Incorporated sa ilang bagong pwesto sa Dalan, Burgos ning syudad. Makahangyo ka o makabarato pagyod diha sa Riverside Parts Master Incorporated.
Sipon plus baradong ilong na may kasamang pananakit ng ulo? Pre, ba't ka nagtitiis? Kung meron namang Calabo Premium Rub, Calabo Premium Rub, isang pahid lang, nanunuot ang sarap sa pakiramdam sa ulo, ilong at sarap sa may ginhawa. Tandaan, basta sipon na may kasamang sakit ng ulo at baradong ilong, magpahid lang ng Calabo Premium Rub. Mabisa, kaya sigurado. Gawa ng Jesser Marketing. Mabibili na ngayon sa mga butiga. Ang kapinghot sa ilong nga imong giantos, hasol kaayo kini, hilabi na kung apilan ng pagsipon nga lisod tangtangon. Sulay higala ang gahom sa Calabo Premium Rub. Ipahid palibot sa imong ilong. Aron ang gahom sa Calabo Extract inubanan sa malunggay and virgin coconut oil manuhot-suhot kini. Calabo Premium Rub, ang sulbad sa pinghot nga ilong. Calabo Premium Rub is a quality product of Jesser Marketing.
RPN Radio Philippines Network, Radyo Ronda DXKS Surigao, member kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
We are on our final stretch. This is Politics as Usual, a special episode on cybersecurity, cyber attacks, given that we have elections, an automated election system in 2 months. On May 9, 2022, Comlink spokesman James Jimenez, technology editor of Manila Bulletin, and cybersecurity analyst Arts Maniego, and James Allworth of Cloudflare still back with us together. We have more questions for you, James Allworth. Well, this is something that's been coming up, but I think it's important to remind people why should we be concerned about our personal accounts, our data getting hacked?
This is the equivalent of our house keys and our personal records. It gives it gives making sure that this is secure is incredibly important, given how much people spend online. So making sure accounts are secure. If your account's not secure, you're effectively able to, or someone's able to impersonate you online wherever they have access to your account. So be that with your bank, with your email provider, on social media, it's incredibly important to make sure that accounts are secure for that reason. Now, data is actually getting too much the same way. When you call up a bank, they will often ask you a series of questions to authenticate yourself, to make sure that you are really who you say you are. If they get access to sufficient information about you, your birthday, other personally identifying information about you, like your addresses, it's such that they're able to impersonate you in all kinds of ways that you really don't want them to.
Well, I think you're touching on a subject which we wanted to talk about. How is the data retrieved or stolen in the first place? Art, touched on this, the idea or the subject of phishing. And you said two-factor authentication is, a move in the right direction, though. But then it does ask you for extra data about you. It does ask you about what is your middle name, what was the name of your first pet, and these are questions that often find their way onto your passwords. Do you get what I'm pointing at here? The more data you give, or the more information you give via things like two-factor authentication, the more of your details are actually floating around on the web. Am I moving in the right direction with that thought?
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're driving at, Paolo. I think it's a case of organizations that you're able to trust. So if my bank asks me for my mother's maiden name, I'm much more comfortable giving it to them. If it's a random website that I'm signing up for because I want to get on a forum, then I will be much more judicious in the information that I share. So the other thing that I would say is that there are other ways of doing two-factor authentication that are worth exploring. There are authenticator apps that you can download, like they're very similar in nature to the little keychains that banks will sometimes give, that give you a randomly generated number that always changes. So you're able to do things like two-factor authentication without necessarily providing Google or Facebook or sometimes a bank more data. It's actually one of the most secure ways that you can do two-factor authentication. And then the last thing you said about sometimes personal information making it into passwords, I would really encourage people not to do that. And again, if you search online for a password manager, that's a really good first step in protecting your online identity.
Okay, Pia was proudly reporting to me that she actually uses a password manager. And I think it is an excellent solution because you want your password to be as difficult as possible to crack, but at the same time, the more difficult it is to crack, more difficult it is to remember. And that's probably why we choose simpler passwords.
Art Samaniego had this big smile on his face when Paolo was asking a question earlier. So Art, I think you want to answer that question also. And at the same time, talk to us also about how this is all going to be used to influence the outcome of the elections. Earlier, we were speaking to James Jimenez, and he was saying, and so were the other commissioners, lock, stock, and barrel. That's paraphrasing. Wala tayong problema. We're not going to have a problem with the elections, no? Art?
Natawa ako dun sa password kasi. Dun sa password. Yeah. So, a password should be easy to remember but hard to guess.
Okay.
So yun yung dapat. Also, treat your password as your underwear. You don't share it to anybody. You don't let anybody see it. And you don't reuse your underwear. It's like your password. Do not reuse your password. Every account should have a different password.
Words to
Kasi pag nanakaw yung isang account mo, wipe out lahat yung iba mong accounts.
Si Art talaga, yung mga soundbites niya para makahulog ka lang sa upuan.
But it makes perfect sense. Don't share your underwear and don't share your passwords.
Okay.
It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense to me.
Okay. Pero,
don't reuse your underwear, don't reuse your password.
Okay. Art, teka, pag-usapan natin, let's talk about the elections. From passwords and underwear to the elections. But anyway, sorry about that. Art, the outcome of the elections, of course, there's a lot of concern, di ba? Given everything that's happening, and then we have elections in 2 months' time, no? How is this all going to impact on May 9?
I have a request from the Senate not to talk about this incident because of the sensitivity of the information that we got.
What
so,
this?
in respect
What is
to
this?
the Senate, I'll talk after the hearing of the Senate pag may permission na ako.
Okay. But earlier James was saying that there was no hacking that happened, and if I remember correctly, hindi ba? No, Paolo, kanina sabi nga ni James. Diba, James, you were saying that as a matter of fact, the hackers were actually going after another
that we got from the tipster appear to be files from the COMELEC.
Okay. Yeah. Ganito na lang, Art.
So,
maybe
that's why we're saying that it's from the COMELEC, and we asked COMELEC to verify it.
Okay. Well, maybe I can ask it this way, Art.
Sinasabi ng COMELEC ngayon na hindi kami nahack. Pero hindi nila sinasabi kung sino yung nahack. Even the DICT and the CICT says it's the third-party provider of the COMELEC which has no presence in the Philippines without the COMELEC.
Okay. Well, Art, maybe I can ask this question of you.
I have
Yes, you've been
the
asked.
Senate not to
Yes,
talk about
yes.
it.
But
Thank
can
you.
I ask this question and then tell me if you can answer this? No. How confident are you in our elections?
Ginagawa ng ito ha, nakikita ko ha, ginagawa ng COMELEC ang lahat to secure the election.
Okay, that's good enough.
Well, I think maybe we can ask James to react to that, because if there's one thing I think that will cast any kind of a shadow of a doubt on you as a voter, on us as a voter, whether or not the very tenet of the democratic election process is that your vote is sacred and your vote is actually going to be counted. But whenever there is a past experience of information leaking, of a hacker being able to get into your system, it casts a shadow of a doubt and leaves a very bad taste in the mouth of the voter. I, as a voter, wonder if my vote is actually going to be counted. How do we reassure people that in this round of elections, James, we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're airtight?
Well, that's a tough job. Paolo. See, the thing is this, no? When people talk about hacking, they're not talking about the election system that we use. Again, because our elections are offline, they're not really hackable in that sense. We don't use an electronic voting system. We don't use a system that really depends on online systems for it to work. We have a system that is entirely offline. There is a part of it that leverages the use of networks and transmissions, but even that is severable. It's something that you can take away, right? And it would not affect the outcome of the elections. Yun nga ang problema natin dito. Ang problema natin is that I guess the automated election system is still very new to a lot of people. The concepts involved are still very new, and that there's still a lot of fear about the unknown, about something that is not fully understood yet. But bottom line, as far as the hackings thus far are concerned, the COMELEC stands by its word that there really is no threat to the electoral system. Again, this is not to trivialize cybersecurity matters. Cybersecurity is a major problem. But the way the electoral system is designed right now, speaking specifically of this point in time, we feel that there is very little threat to the integrity of that system arising from these hackings. Of course, the hackers are going to say different, but again, bottom line, we are offline.
All right, just really quick. It came to my mind. We're focusing on the elections, and there hasn't been a lot of talk about how we might pivot should we see a rise in cases of COVID. Should there be a new variant that will keep us home? Are we in any way ready to pivot to another system where we don't have to show up and actually fill in our ballots and hand in our ballots? And how will that then affect the security?
Would we be able to email our votes?
Will we be going to an online voting system? Do we have a backup system? And how secure would that system be?
we're not ready. We're not ready to pivot to that to any alternative system right now. Voting by mail is not available to us. Obviously, you need a strong postal system as a backbone for any online voting for any postal voting system. Online voting again is still years away from realization in the Philippines. We are probably closing in on it for overseas voting, but not for local. So in-person voting is really what we have right now.
I see.
Yeah, we ran out of time, and I think this means that we should have a part 2 of this. Or maybe you should have a tech show, Paolo.
Well, there's an idea.
Yeah.
I'd love to have everybody back, particularly James Allworth. Great information. Thank you so much, James, for being with us.
Thank you, James Allworth, James Jimenez, and Art Samaniego. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or the family reunion or in Viber groups and risk digital warfare. But we can talk about it here at this table on the show. Your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. I'm Pia Ontiveros.
And tonight, Paolo Obrera, I hope tonight has been as interesting for you as it was for me.
It was for me. Thank you, Paolo.
Pleasure.
See you back here next Tuesday, 8:30 p.m.
SMC